Coming up on In-Flight Snack, just when you thought it couldn't get any worse, the Jets find new lows. And that's what happened on Friday against the Miami Dolphins. The Jets are 4-7 now, like I told you they would be. And it feels like they're playing out a string and this team has given up. So ultimately, whose head is going to be on the chopping block? Does this start costing people jobs? And we talked about what could happen with this team moving forward the rest of this year and beyond this season. Not the most fun episode, I'll say, but definitely we try and have a good time with it and still do our thing, Bilal and I. So great episode coming up. All that and a whole lot more coming up next on In-Flight Snack. The holiday season is off and rolling with NFL in full stride and NBA and NHL hitting midseason form. BetOnline is your number one destination for all your sports wagering info. With up-to-the-minute wagering news, odds, trends, and predictions, BetOnline is the top spot for everything pro and amateur sports. And not just the big four. BetOnline has info available at your fingertips with both desktop and mobile access at any time for almost any sport that's played. From MMA to international soccer, head to BetOnline today. And remember to use the promo code BELIEVE, that's BLEAV, for a 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. BetOnline, where the game starts.
Let's go empty. Shotgun Fitzpatrick. Underneath. Powell catching curve. Powell stays on his feet. He's gone. Touchdown. Jets. Bilal Powell.
Hurts facing a four-man rush over the middle. It's intercepted. Picked off by Tony Adams. Adams on the run. Breaking tackles. Tossed down inside the 10. Tries this year. Wilson looking to the end zone. The two-point try is good.
Takes the snap, drops the throw on 4th and 8. Well protected, looks left, heaves a bomb down the middle of the field. It is broken up by Jordan Whitehead. The Jets are gonna win it.
Let's make sure we play like the New York Jets. Let's go to eat a damn snack.
Yo, it's Quinn Wins here, and you listen to In-Flight Snack on the Believe Podcast Network.
Welcome back to In-Flight Snack, a New York Jets podcast on the Believe Podcast Network. That's Bilal Powell. I'm Rami Lavi. Good morning. Today is Monday, November 27th. Hope everyone had a nice holiday weekend. And if you're a Jets fan today at this point, and if you're a Jets fan on Friday watching that, like myself, you just had to laugh. At some point, it's just funny because it's the same stuff over and over again. We're used to it. There's nothing else to do. There's nothing that can make it any better. It just is what it is. It sucks. This is how it's been. And when I watched that pick six at the end of the first half, 100-yard pick six on a Hail Mary, and I'm watching the guy, and the second he gets about like 15 yards out of the end zone, I realize everyone's behind him and no one's going to stop him. And it almost happened in slow motion. I just laughed. And that's what we should all do. I made money on the game. Listen to my bets, Bilal. I had the Dolphins minus 9.5. I had the Dolphins alternate spread minus 6.5. I had the Jets under 14.5 total points. That was easy also. I had Mostert to score a touchdown. He scored 2 of them. I had Hill to get 60 yards. He had 100 yards. It was the easiest day of gambling I've ever had in my life. I made a ton of money off of it. And I just sat there and laughed. And maybe it was a little bit of the extracurricular activity that I was doing that was making me just not angry. I was just laughing about it because at some point, that's the point that we're at with this franchise where we've watched this now for God knows how many years. For me, I've been a fan now for what? 20 years. For you've been a fan for 4. You were part of the organization for 9. You just got to look at this and be like, there's nothing to even talk about. For me to come on here and yell and scream about the same thing happening over and over again, it's just typical. Just when they think they can't disappoint you and they can't upset you more and they can't get it any worse, they find a new low. So that said, Bilal, how was your holiday weekend? I know it was your wife's birthday, Thanksgiving. You had obviously your national team. You were doing some practice with them. So all that stuff. How's it going, man?
It's going good. I mean, outside of the loss, everything else was well. Had a chance to eat some good food.
Mm-hmm.
But then, I had caught glimpses of the game. I didn't get a chance to really watch it
and obviously I'm glad I didn't. I always go off of your reaction, Rami. Anytime you get on here, the hat's backwards, and you're drinking coffee, I know it was a tough sledding game for the New York Jets. But what else did you expect? I mean, they started Boyle. Like, you told me the stats, and not ones that I asked for him. I wanted Trevor Siemian. So for me, it's almost like, what are the Jets playing for? When what is the Jets organization saying to their players when they don't put the best available guys out on the field? What are you saying? What
Yeah,
can
and
you say in the team meeting after a loss to a divisional opponent? What can you say to you guys? How can you look in them in the eyes and say, hey, we put the best players out there to help us win, still had a chance at the playoffs? Now to me, it's a wrap. It's a wrap. And now you're going to start seeing all these young guys get opportunity, and some veterans sit down. You see a couple veterans sitting on the bench already, guys inactive. It's nothing else to say, honestly. And I didn't want to get on this podcast on a Monday and talk like this, but I have to. It's almost asking yourself, like, what are they playing for? Are they playing for a high pick? Well, we're tired of hearing that. I heard that my entire career. Oh, they're sinking the season for a high pick. Well, who are you gonna go get? Who can definitely come in here and help us win? Absolutely nobody. Because when you have a team and a defense like that, and you just find a way to throw the season away, no one's gonna come in here and help you win. That starts from the coaching staff, honestly. Like, and I'm only coaching 6th grade, Rami. But you know what I tell my kids, when I tell my players, is, as coaches, we have to put you in the best position possible. Best position.
yep.
You have to execute, no matter what that may be. And then we have to make our adjustments. I think the New York Jets need to really ask themselves if they give themselves a chance to win against a good Miami Dolphins team. Now, are they the best team in the league? No, but they're a very high-powered offense, one of the most explosive offenses. Did you really give your defense a chance to win when you put in and started and decided to start Tim Boyle over Trevor Siemian? When you look at the statistics, and you told me the statistics, and I was shocked at the fact that this guy is in the NFL with the statistics that he had. And not only did he make it, he's just hanging around. So I'm just like to myself, like, okay.
Yeah, and the video, by the way, has like 250,000 views on Instagram. So if you want to check
Oh
it
yeah.
out,
Oh yeah, 200 and something. That was big. Maybe we need to do more of those Tim
yeah,
Boyle
exactly.
videos so we can get more exposure. But I mean, right now we're talking about the Jets and what they're doing, man. Honestly, I think it's one of those things where they're not going to overcome this. And then there's so many hot seats right now sitting on hot coal. There's hot seats going on. We don't know who it is, but there's hot seats going on. Somebody's going to get fired. I have a feeling someone's going to get fired. I don't know who. And then at that point, I don't know who manages it. I don't know who brings in who. I don't know who has say so. I'm just here to celebrate my wife's birthday today, Rami.
Well, happy
That's it.
birthday! Happy birthday! I'm glad we could laugh about that. But here's the thing: like you said, this team, at some point, they look in the mirror and they say, "What am I supposed to do?" Right? This organization is not trying to win. The idea that when Rodgers went down, and this goes all the way back to that first game, because they failed as an organization from that day when they didn't bring in a backup. They stuck with Wilson. They admitted last year that Wilson wasn't ready to play. And then even once Rodgers went down, they failed to bring in a backup. And so they basically told the rest of the locker room, we don't care about winning. And I feel bad for the players. I feel bad for the coaches. The coaches on this team were told, we don't care about your job. Because ultimately, and we just saw this in Carolina this morning, Frank Reich was fired for a decision that the organization made. Right? The organization, David Tepper, the owner, wanted to draft Bryce Young over CJ Stroud. CJ Stroud is looking like the rookie of the year and a potential multiple-time MVP in this league at some point. And Bryce Young looks like a rookie quarterback who maybe will figure it out, or most likely, because most of them do, will bust.
Mm-hmm.
And the guy who got fired and lost his job for it is Frank Reich 11 games into the season. He wasn't going to make Bryce Young any better. Bryce Young is what he is. But Carolina's looking at this. They can't live with the decision they made to draft him over CJ Stroud, which I wouldn't be able to live with that decision either. And they needed a scapegoat, so they fired Frank Reich. The coaching staff on this Jets team is going to be scapegoated. And I feel bad for them. But more than that, more than the players, which you can speak to, more than the owner, I definitely don't feel bad for the owner. He's sitting in a box somewhere. He's making his money. He's fine. I feel bad for the fans. This is a public trust. When you own a sports team, it's a public duty to do right by the fans. And this was a year that was a win now window. And you decided to punt on the season once Aaron Rodgers got hurt. You said, Rodgers is hurt. What can we do about it? We'll try again next year. You had an opportunity to go get better quarterback play. You had an opportunity to make changes in the season. You had an opportunity to do something. This is a really good team. Take advantage of this defense. And instead, you're like, he got hurt. What are we supposed to do? And then you went ahead and you raised season ticket prices for next year on the fans anyway. And you told them that they have to commit to next year's season tickets 3 months ahead of their usual time that they have to commit to season tickets. So I don't feel bad for you, Woody Johnson. I think he's blissfully unaware. I don't think Woody Johnson cares about winning or losing. He cares about the money that comes in. He doesn't care about the fans. So I feel terrible for the fans who have to sit through the last 15 years of this team being absolute, just awful, just an awful franchise. And this team sitting there and doing the same thing again when we had a real opportunity this year and you punted on it again. And you mentioned that, what did you expect on Friday? I didn't expect them to win. Look, the Dolphins only beat up on bad teams. The Jets are a bad team. That's who the Dolphins beat up on. But it's even in the losses finding new lows. It's how you lose. It's the optics of it. And the optics from Friday were a team that gave up, a team that was undisciplined as always, and then another historically bad play. You could look at the butt fumble that happened on Thanksgiving. You could look at the fake spike game that happened on Thanksgiving weekend. And now you have a new Thanksgiving memory, a 100-yard pick six on a Hail Mary. That I've never seen that before in my life. And of course, it happened to the Jets because it always happens to the Jets.
Always is a strong word, but it seems that way.
For the last 15 years.
It seems that way. And hey, listen, I've been a part of it for a long time now. And I'm in this because I want to see the New York Jets win. And there's so many layers and factors that goes into this business. I'm assuming I've never sat in an office where they evaluate players or what those meetings are like, but I can only assume. And the New York Jets lining up against the Dolphins didn't even stand a chance. They didn't stand a chance. They didn't stand a chance. They didn't stand a chance when the organization didn't decide to go get a quarterback. They didn't stand a chance. So we go from Zach Wilson to Tim Boyle. They didn't stand a chance. And it almost makes you think that Aaron Rodgers not only convinced the fans, but the organization that he's going to hurry back so they don't go get a quarterback that can possibly take the shine away from him. I mean, I can only assume, Rami. Like, I'm not a fly on the wall. Like. I'm not a fly on the wall. I'm not in the locker room. I'm not in the business decision offices where they're meeting. I'm not doing that. But just from I can only assume in my mind that was this all to keep the quarterbacks that were best available at the time away for him to, hey, I'm coming back. Aaron Rodgers, honestly, with no playoff hopes, why would you come back right now? Why would you come back? And then I guarantee when we get closer and closer to that time, then you're going to get the news that, oh, he's not ready yet. Because I've seen this, Rami. I've seen guys come in here as veterans, come in here to New York. By the way, they always say if you want to go in your career or you're on your way out, you come to New York. I've seen guys fake injuries when the playoff hopes were out. I've seen it. And I won't name anybody. I won't name any players. But I've seen it. I know they wasn't hurt. I've seen guys fake injuries going into training camp so they don't have to go through that. And then they're day one starters. I've seen it. So it almost makes you think, all right, how much say-so does Aaron Rodgers have right now? And was he a big factor in the New York Jets not going to get the best available quarterback at the time of his injury? And you said it early on, and I didn't believe you. But now I'm starting to assume that's what it is. And I can only assume that. And it's unfair to the players. It's unfair to the guys that put in that hard work. It's unfair when I look over and I see a guy faking an injury, or when I see a guy. I'm not saying Aaron Rodgers is faking an injury, but I've seen
no.
guys fake
Yeah.
injuries to get past training camp, to go on, be day one starters. Then they get there, and then all of a sudden they're not performing. Then they try to say all these injuries are happening. Then when the playoff hopes is out the door, then all of a sudden they're inactive. I've seen it. All right. I've
And
seen it as a player. All right. And I can't speak from it sitting in the office. I wish I was a fly on the wall listening in on these meetings, but I'm not. So we can only assume as fans, like, what is really going on. And for the past 15 years, all right, you said it, like, what is it? Because I look at this roster from day one and I say, hey, easily we have one of the most talented rosters in the NFL. And you don't come across that. And I'm not talking about just defense, offensive side of the ball. You don't come across that. So if I was management, I would have had a date. They didn't have, it looked like they didn't have a plan B. Once plan A was out the door, they couldn't put their heads together to come up with a plan B. And I don't know who had any say so with that. I'm not going to go into that depth. But it just looked like, man, like you said, you feel bad for the fans. I didn't pay any money for no tickets. So, I don't know what the fans are feeling like. I can look at it from my TV, but fans that, hard-earned money, inflation going on around the country, you feel bad for fans that really paid money for those season tickets thinking that they're going to have an expectation. All right. These fans pay for higher price tickets because, okay, they're setting their expectations up here. And then all of a sudden you see the organization not trying their best to go out and get a guy that can help them win. It probably could be frustrating. I don't know. I'm not part of the organization. I'm not. I'm only a former player that sometimes I go in, I get a chance to see, guys in pregame, stand on the sideline, then I go to my seat and I watch the game. That's it. That's all I'm doing. But now I'm looking at it as a fan, and I can only assume what's going on in that building.
Yeah, and you talk about Rodgers. Another report comes out this week that he's targeting December 24th against Washington to come back. He might practice as early as this week. I mean, it seems like he's the one running the show, right? It seems like he's the guy who's making all these decisions. And you talk
Is
about
he the
this very-
selling point though? Is that what they're hanging their hat on as the selling point to raise the price?
Yeah.
Like,
Oh,
you ask your
100% it
questions.
is.
I don't know. I don't know, Rami.
I called my season ticket rep and I said, why are the tickets going up? He said, well, it's a long season. And sure, it didn't start great, but there's still plenty of time. And he said this to me when they were 4-4 or 4-5. And I'm like, okay, well, they're going to be 4-7, which they were. And then he starts giving me coach speak, with Aaron coming back next year. Obviously, it didn't go as well as expected because he got hurt, but he's coming back next year. And so we expect a big jump. And I'm like, what are they feeding you over there in New York? This guy doesn't believe this. The season ticket rep doesn't believe this. And so, yeah, they're selling everyone on Rodgers. But you talk about the other players. You're supposed to be the leader. You're supposed to be the quarterback. What kind of precedent does it set for everyone else when they see Aaron coming out here and doing what he wants and playing by his own rules? What does a guy like Quentin Williams see? And he's like a team leader and he's been here for years and he's lost here. He's put
just signed an extension to be here.
And he's watching Rodgers waltz in and just take control of everything. And it's costing you a chance in his career. Like you talked about with LT on last episode, this is one chance that Quentin Williams is never going to get back. How do the players now look at Rodgers in the face? And what, are they still going to look at him the way they did in training camp on Hard Knocks and be like, oh, it's Aaron Rodgers. Oh my God. Or they can be like, this fucking dude. You know what I mean? Like that's how I would look at him.
I don't know, man. I mean, I'm sure, and at this time, this is when you can see character. And this is how guys, I'm not saying that players are talking bad about Aaron right now. I'm not saying that they're pointing fingers at Aaron, but at this time, like, this is how you get your name around the league. Like, this is like, what type of guy is he? Like, is he a me guy? Is he really a team guy? those are the things that are circulating in the locker room and sometimes they leak out, right? He can put up the front in front of the media, but like the locker room is the locker room. So you're almost asking yourself like, what's really going around, or going through the minds of the players is sitting in the locker room looking around. Like I've been in that locker room, and you can only look around and wonder, right? You can only look around and wonder who's talking to who's saying what, which players going up to the coach's office, because right now coaches are asking, "Hey, how's the locker room? Like what conversations are going on?" And guys are looking around now. Now guys are starting to get tight. They're starting to get, you know, uh, you know, they're second guessing conversations. Now it's all starting to fall apart, and I get it's starting to fall apart. You saw what happened to the defense. It's over. You could tell those guys to go out and fight, but now it comes down to the locker room.
Yeah,
Now
and the teams quit.
it comes down to that, man. Like it comes down to the the staff and management. They're trying to figure out, hey, what's the energy like? You know, Michael Carter, for an example. That player's meeting very well could have been about him. He could have
Yeah.
very well been saying things in the locker room that somebody went back and said something to, and all of a sudden he's cut, he's released. So now you're
Thank
starting
God
to
they
get
cut him, because look how much it helped the team. I hope my sarcasm is translating.
Oh my God, no! Rami, listen, I can tell you, I can always look at the camera and tell if you're what type of game the New York Jets had. I don't have to watch a game. I just get on and look at your reactions on Monday, and I know what type of game it was. All right. But I mean, those are the things that's where you are right now. Pretty much like what is the locker room like, and all these different things, and who's having what conversations. Because everybody's like, okay, I'm on a hot seat. I need to know what's going on in the locker room. If guys giving up on me, all right. Because if guys are giving up on me, then what kind of game plan should I put together? Should I just say, okay, let's just get to vacation. Let's just get through the season. Let's tank it. Let's pretend like we're putting a game plan together. Like you got to get that feeling from as a coach from your players, and now all of a sudden you got guys walking up that you never seen walk up and go talk to the head coach. It's like, okay, I know I probably can't talk to him like I really want to.
Yeah.
I can't vent to him. So those are the things you're facing right now at this time, especially when you had a good opportunity ahead of you. Even with the injury of Rodgers, I think just going to get a solid quarterback still would have gave us a good chance to get into the playoffs. Like we weren't talking about Super Bowl contending, but we were still in conversation with playoffs, even with Aaron Rodgers going down.
Can you imagine? Just paint this picture for yourself. The Jets go out and get, I don't know, Josh Dobbs. And I think Josh Dobbs looks good in Minnesota. I don't think he'd look as good in this offense, because I think there's real issues with Nathaniel Hackett, which we can get into at some point. But they go out and get Josh Dobbs, the second week of the season. And he comes in here and starts. He starts a few games. And the Jets are 5-5 right now. Or, yeah, they're 5-6, let's say, instead of 4-7. Still not great, but 5-6 or 6-5. And the news drops that Aaron Rodgers is planning to come back December 24th, we'd be ecstatic. We'd be like, oh my God, this team has a chance to go to the playoffs. All they need to do is win a game, and then Rodgers comes back. You have a bad team in Atlanta coming up. They're home underdogs against Atlanta, who sucks. I know they just beat the Saints, but Derek Carr threw that game quite literally. Then you have Washington coming up at home. You have Houston, who I know CJ Stroud looks awesome, but he's still a rookie quarterback, still a young team. And I have a question for you about that game also. We'll get to it a little bit later if we have time. Like, we'd be ecstatic. We'd be like, we have a chance to make a run. So you cost yourself, Aaron Rodgers, by not wanting another quarterback to come in, because if it really was Rodgers' decision, by not wanting another quarterback to come in, you cost yourself an opportunity to have one of the great comeback stories where you come back and lead this team to the playoffs. Now you're going to come back for nothing, for a meaningless season. And by the way, we talk about the fans. Aaron Rodgers, I want to see you back this year, because you owe it to the fans. You owe at least that much to the fans, because we're paying all this money and we're paying for next year. We deserve to see you play for this team. I'm sorry. You can risk injury again. You want to get re-hurt, you'll do the rehab again, and you'll come back in time for next season. But If you were controlling everything behind the scenes, to me, the second he got hurt, he should have been out of the picture, and we don't talk about him. Like you said. You said that from day one. Aaron Rodgers is not here. He doesn't exist. Now that he got hurt and he was still controlling the team from outside the organization, from California at his rehab center, well, now you owe it to the fans and you owe it to the team and to your teammates to come back and play this year. If you're healthy enough, I don't care if you're 85%, 90%. If you get your doctor slip from Joe Rogan that says that you can play, you're coming back to play. I really don't give a shit. And I already swore on the podcast once, so I might as well it's going to have that little E next to it, so I might as well let it loose now. I don't know what to tell you.
Nothing else to say. I mean,
yeah. Well, look, there's going to be a scapegoat.
It'll make the show fun, though, for all the fans that are clicking subscribe and listening. We can make it fun.
Yeah, and that's the thing. We're going to have some great guests. Bilal has a lot of teammates. We have a lot of contacts. We're going to have a fun time. We're going to talk sports. We'll talk basketball. We'll talk New York Rangers have been the best team in hockey. If you're into some puck talk, we'll talk about the Jets. We'll make the Jets talk fun. And we'll also go around the NFL. We have, and I could say this is a special privilege. We're someone who played in the league for 9 years, knows a lot of people in the league, knows how the league runs. There's a lot of stuff to talk about in the league. We can talk about the playoffs, talk about the Chiefs, talk about the Eagles in that big game. There's a lot to talk about. So we're going to take a quick break, but coming up after the break, we're going to do a couple things. There has to be a scapegoat for this season. It's not because that they're losing. And I think this team could very possibly end the season 4-13. I think that's a real possibility that they don't win another game the rest of the year. Maybe they get 5, maybe they get 6 wins. But I think it's possible they end with 4. Somebody has, but even the losses don't mean that there has to be a scapegoat. If it was just the losses, I'd be fine with it. It's the optics, like I mentioned. It's how you're losing. It's the way it looks. It's a team not being ready. A team, like you said, playing like they're already, like they have no chance. Going into the game looking like they have no chance. I'll explain who the scapegoat is and why right after a quick break. Coming back, we're going to go around the league a little bit later. We're going to do a lot of fun segments. Bilal played, like I said, in the NFL for 9 years. He's got some stories. We could talk about power rankings. We could do around the league, stories from around the league. We could do story time with Bilal. I want people to send in their questions, obviously, to us, but also send in your suggestions if you have any suggestions for segments or things you want to hear from Bilal about the league. There are some stories that Bilal has told me that I can share on here, and you can decide if you want to confirm or deny them once I do share them about your time in the NFL and some of your stories with the Jets. So we'll get into all that stuff, and we'll do that a little bit later. But first, I do think this season has been so bad that there has to be a scapegoat. And I don't want this to be the case, but I think you have to do it. And if it were up to me, I would do it today. Because I saw for 2 weeks in a row now that this team has quit. This team came out not ready to play. And you mentioned the team going into the game feeling like they have no chance. Robert Saleh, on the first Dolphins drive of the game, challenged a catch that was a 5-yard gain that would have made it 2nd and 5, and he challenged it to make it 2nd and 10 instead. A difference of 5 yards when they were inside their own territory. Doesn't that tell you how scared he is? That he was scared of a 2nd and 5? He's coaching scared. The first play of the game, Quentin Williams makes a tackle for a loss, a 4-yard loss, and Quentin Jefferson comes in, late hit, 15-yard penalty. This team is undisciplined. They lost the game in Vegas. And you could go back further than that. They lost the game. They were completely unprepared for a Monday night game when they had a real chance against a terrible, terrible Los Angeles Chargers team that just lost another game last night. They're 4-7 too. They're just as bad as the Jets. They lost that game. They weren't ready to play. They went to Vegas and threw that game. They win that game if not for penalties. They threw that game away. Then they go into Buffalo on the first snap. You could tell they weren't ready to play and they didn't give a shit. And then the first snap again at home on Black Friday against Miami. Totally unprepared. So at some point, you can't overcome all these things. A 6-game losing streak to end the year last year. You start 7-4 and you collapse down the stretch. Guys walking around in Mike White jerseys when Zach Wilson is the starting quarterback. Guys on Twitter tweeting their feelings and talking about different things and bashing other people. A team that's now quit 2 weeks in a row. A defense that's supposed to be the top defense in the league quit 2 weeks in a row. The personal foul penalties over and over and over and over. The pre-snap penalties over and over. The lack of discipline on the entire team. And then all of a sudden, Robert Saleh Mr. King of Discipline decides to discipline Breece Hall of all people in his press conference. The guy who's been one of the best players on the team this year. And he calls out Breece Hall saying, yeah, he gets those easy yards, but he doesn't get the tough, gritty yards. What? And Breece Hall, by the way, took it better than anyone. Breece Hall went on Twitter and said, wow, everyone's so insulted on my behalf. I can take constructive criticism, which I love that Breece Hall did that. I don't like that he did it publicly, but I like that he took it as constructive criticism. Like, you lost this room, and I'm sorry, Robert Saleh. You are going to have to pay the price for this. The media, you're so unsure when you say, I plead the fifth about Zach Wilson. And then last year, your answers about Wilson. And this year, he seems unsure. He doesn't have command of the room. I'm watching this new Hard Knocks, the in-season Hard Knocks for the Miami Dolphins. And Mike McDaniel just has a command of the room. He has a command. Yes, he's quirky. He's weird. But when he says something, he says it with conviction. Robert Saleh never says anything with conviction. And it sucks because I think Robert Saleh didn't get a real chance. He never had a real quarterback. Robert Saleh was in an awful situation. I wish it was better. And I don't know if he can be a good coach or not. I don't know. I don't think we have that answer. But you need someone to take responsibility for this loss. And I would fire Robert Saleh today. I would make Jeff Ulbrich the interim head coach and see what happens. I don't know.
Yeah. I would say this. I think looking at it, it's almost like parenting. When you look at an undisciplined team, it's almost like, hey, I'm not your friend. I'm your dad. I'm your parent. Because when you put that friend label on it, then sometimes your kids, they get too much freedom and not enough correction. And it's almost like that with coaching. Like once you're labeled as a player's coach, you have to have like this healthy balance of discipline. And we've seen it all year now. You're doing two things. You're either coaching this stuff to happen or you're allowing it to happen as a coach. All right. You're either coaching it to happen or you're allowing it to happen. So at what point does Robert put his foot down to his players and say, hey, this has to change. It has to be emphasized week in, week out. That's the thing about coaching. Like sometimes you can't even get away. You get too far away from the basics. And as you see the season start to slip, you had to almost pull your team back in and say, hey, we have to get back to the basics. What is the basics? Fundamentals, discipline. All right. And like you said, the having an undisciplined team is not going to help you win, especially when you're struggling on offense. And when you look at the structure of the way they're acting, the undisciplinary part of it, it's almost like you have to go and get you a proven coach, a coach that's established, a coach that understands what he wants from his players, and maybe not a first year coach. Maybe you go get a coach. Honestly, like and I'll say this, I like Robert. I sat down with him, great dude. I love his philosophy, but I sit here and I ask myself, what would Rex Ryan do with this defense? I've been a part of Rex Ryan. I can't speak for Robert. I've been with Rex. He's a player's coach, but he had that balance of, hey, I'm a player's coach, but it's business still. It's a time for everything. Robert Saleh, man, honestly, I think now the net is too far pitched and it's too far for you to reel in. And honestly, it has to be an example made this year because of the team that we had to win. Like if you can't win with this team, how are you going to win with any other team? And it was all laid out this year. And you talk about Robert attacking Breece. When you get to that point, it's over. It's either Breece leaving or Robert Saleh leaving. And that's how this all goes about in this business. When you gotta, as a coach, say, hey, keep everything in-house, and then you going out there a player because you don't know what to say or is looking that bad that you have to start pointing fingers at a player and not taking responsibility for your coach, then that's a problem. That's a problem that you have to look in the mirror Because as a player, if I ever see a coach criticizing me, knowing how much I put in, and we seen as a fan base, and I seen as a spectator that Brees Hall is 100% effort every play. He's getting touched 80% of the time in the backfield and still finding a way to gain yards. He's your most explosive player on your offense, but yet you say he needs to break more tackles. How about you say our O line needs to block better, put accountability on it. We need a better scheme. We need better technique. We need better teachers and coaches. How about that? How about we take advantage as a whole organization? Say, hey, we have to do better as a staff, and our players have to do better as players. Not
And
just
where was this
yeah,
Mr. Accountability when we were talking about Zach Wilson screwing up week after week? He never held him accountable. So if
he
I'm Brees,
never.
I'm like, you didn't hold that guy accountable, and now you're coming after me?
But I talked to you about this. I told you about this. I said it's going to come to a point where players and coaches are going to start going against each other. Robert Saleh he's not going to talk about his defense like that because that's his defense. He's
Yep.
a defensive guy. So he has to point fingers at the bad spots and poke.
And he's not allowed to hold Nathaniel Hackett accountable because that's Rodgers' guy. So
yeah,
God forbid, you
exactly.
can't speak bad about Hackett, who's had a terrible game plan this year.
Yeah, exactly. And so you have to poke the bear in a different place. And Brees Hall, to me, arguably is one of the best running backs in the league. I mean, he was upholding the end of his bargain coming off an ACL injury. He was the only spark in this offense outside of Garrett Wilson. And then Garrett Wilson started dropping balls. Yeah, he's averaging seven carries, seven receptions, and almost close to 100 yards. But Brees Hall doing what he has been doing behind that offensive line, or injured offensive line, guys who were coming in, getting signed off the streets, guys who were just delivering Uber Eats probably, and now they're playing on Sundays. Like this guy was averaging 5 yards a carry, like still showing explosiveness coming off in the ACL. So how can you say that about a player?
Yeah.
So for me, it starts with the discipline of making sure we stay off of Twitter. If the first time you go to Twitter, bench him. But don't get to a point, like I told you, don't keep allowing things to happen. Either you're coaching it happen, you're allowing it to happen, and then when the pressure starts closing in on you, then all of a sudden you got to start pointing fingers. It should have been addressed from the get-go. That's how it is as a coach.
Yeah.
And I never coached this thing past sixth grade. All right. That's that. I've only been a fifth or sixth grade coach, but I played this game and I understand what it's like to as a player, like what I need from my coaching staff, because I know what they need from me as a player. And that's it.
And you played for 3 head coaches in 9 years. And I think here's the thing. It's more the optics, like we talked about. It's more just how it looks. And I don't remember a Rex team. I could think of one that quit on him. Like, I think your rookie year, the team kind of quit a little bit at the end when you're 8-5. And then obviously there's the Giant game and the Philly game and the game in Miami, right? To end the season, which was tough. And Santonio Holmes is turn around on the sideline. Maybe at some point you'll tell us that story. I don't know what was happening on that team, and you're a rookie. You're probably wondering what the hell's going on. But like, again, that's the only time I can remember a team that like actually just kind of quit. And then Rex made it through that. And of course, even the year that
the
we talked about,
4-12 season.
you think the
That was
team quit that
horrible.
year?
That was horrible. I mean,
What,
we were just
2014?
horrible. I mean,
Right.
we knew as players. I'm looking around like at the skill. I'm looking at guys we had on the roster. I'm like, dog, there's no chance. No matter
But
what
did
you
that
call
team
us.
quit?
It
Was
wasn't
that
quit.
team?
It was just it wasn't that it was quit. It was just at a certain point, yeah, you just like, okay, whatever. And coaches go through the motions just like players. You can look
Yeah.
at a game plan and be like, okay, they're just going through the motion. They're just trying to get through. Like stuff is cut down, like practices are starting to get shorter, and there's no emphasis on the things that we were, talking about early in that year. And like I said, things that you start to let happen. Like you can tell as a player, of going through the motions and what going through the motions look like from a player standpoint to a coach, and then from a coach to a player. You understand it.
Yeah, and the thing is, you talked about the veteran head coaches as opposed to bringing in a young guy. Since Rex Ryan, the team has always tried to get the new fancy coordinator who's a young guy, whether it was Todd Bowles, his defense right under Bruce Arians, and then it was Adam Gase. Oh, he's this guru offensive mind. Now it's Rob Saleh. He was the coordinator for Shanahan out in San Francisco, all that stuff. at some point you need an adult to come in the room and command the room. Somebody who's been there before, somebody who's been there long enough. And I don't think it's Robert Saleh's fault. I don't want to lose Jeff Ulbrich, but he's probably going to get a head coaching job somewhere at the end of the season anyway. And I don't know if we ever knew what Robert Saleh was going to be, but I think we've seen enough to know that we can only get so far with Robert Saleh. I don't think we're getting over that hump with Robert Saleh. And what I compare it to is a few things. Like, remember when Sam Darnold, after his second year, we weren't sure about him as a quarterback, but it was like, he probably doesn't have it. And I think he was put in a terrible situation because of Gase and because of all the different things. But the Jets after year 2 were like, all right, let's give him one more year. Let's see what happens. When in that draft, there was Joe Burrow, there was Justin Herbert, there was Tua Tagovailoa, and they didn't draft any of those guys because they stuck with Sam Darnold. The same thing with Rex. You stuck with Rex, and you could have gotten out and gotten an Andy Reid. But, you know, you're like, yeah, I think we're good with Rex. And then when Todd Bowles, you stuck with him a year too long, right? And you're like, you want stability. At some point you plateau. And everyone argues that you need stability. You can't keep firing head coaches over and over again. But at the end of the day, sometimes if you know that you've reached your limit with that head coach, what's firing him a year later going to help you? Like, the way I look at it is the New York Rangers, and maybe you don't know a ton of hockey, but I'll make this a comparison.
I don't know
relevant
hockey at all, so you got to explain.
It's a good comparison. They brought in a head coach, Gerard Gallant, and he took them to the Eastern Conference Finals in their first season, and they went all the way to the end of the Eastern Conference Finals. Unfortunately, they lost. Then the next year, they come in with big expectations, right? Coming off the Eastern Conference Finals, they lose in the first round of the playoffs after having a 2-0 lead in the series. And so, sure, you could look at his resume and say he had 2 years here. And in the 2 years, he went to the playoffs twice. He went to the Eastern Conference Finals one time, and then he lost in the first round in 7 games the next time to a really good New Jersey team. He give him a year 3. But the organization decided, no, we've gone as far as we've gone with him. So they brought in Peter Laviolette, and I know it's early in the season, but the Rangers are the best team in hockey right now because there was just this jump that there was this last step, this last hurdle that Gallant wasn't going to get you over, and Peter Laviolette as a head coach has gotten you over. When I look at this team right now, I don't think Robert Saleh is getting you to that next point, to that next level. You need to go bring in an adult, bring in somebody who can run the organization, who can be the CEO, who can have stability. And to me, the answer is you go to Michigan and you get Jim Harbaugh. Jim Harbaugh is done with college football right now. There's been rumors that he's going to go to the NFL the last couple of years. I think right now he's at the point where he's had enough with everything going on, with him getting suspended multiple times this year. With the way it's looked, I think he's done. I think he's had enough. He wants to make the jump to the NFL. And if you're Jim Harbaugh, look, there's a much better situation out in LA, right? Go coach for the Chargers. Brandon Staley's probably going to get fired out there. You're in California, great weather. You have Justin Herbert, who's an all-time great quarterback. But the thing about coaching out there is it's LA. Who cares? He went to Michigan because he wanted to make an impact. He went to Michigan because he wanted to make a name for himself. He wanted to go to a big name organization that was struggling and turn them around, and he did it. You want to come to a big name organization and turn them around? Come here. Come to New York. And by the way, everyone laughed, and we made fun, I know, on this podcast of Sean Payton. He was going to a veteran quarterback who was stuck in his ways in Russell Wilson. And you know what? It looked bad at the beginning, but within one season in his first year, he's turned that franchise around. They've won 5 games in a row now with Sean Payton. Russell Wilson is a different guy. Russell Wilson is a different quarterback right now than he was. Because you got an adult in the room. You got someone to command the room. So if Rodgers is going to look at Jim Harbaugh and say, I don't want him. I want my guy Hackett to be the head coach if you're going to fire Saleh.
No, that can't happen.
Then goodbye, Aaron Rodgers. I'm sorry. I don't know.
That can't
it can happen. You
mean,
believe that can happen?
Not as that. He probably can't.
They've catered to every single one of his.
That can't happen. If that happened, that's crazy.
Of course it can happen. You don't think that can happen?
Oh, he didn't even do good in Denver.
Yeah. And yet he's here.
He's not even doing good this year.
Exactly. You don't think Aaron Rodgers would be like, no, trust me, he's my guy. He could be the head coach.
The Jets organization would be crazy to look at his resume and say yes.
They're crazy for
to that.
listening to everything Rodgers has wanted until now. They
Yeah,
gave
I mean you
it
can't
all to
do that.
Rodgers.
They can't do that to. If I'm gonna tell you like this, I'll tell you like this exactly. If Nathaniel Hackett becomes the head coach next year, you're gonna have a lot of guys on that defense that want out. Because right now a lot of guys are gonna want to go with Robert. Honestly.
Yeah.
A lot of guys are gonna want to go. If he leaves, no matter if it's a coordinating job or another head, whatever it may be.
And with Jeff.
Yeah, they're gonna want to leave.
They're both gonna leave.
So you gotta look at yourself as like, hey, is our offense better than our defense? Right. So you gotta serve the defense right now because they've been the top defense in 2 years, the last two consecutive seasons.
Yeah.
So you have to look at yourself as an organization and you have to serve your defense right now. You have to find a way to keep that defense together and then fix the pieces on offense. Because if you let the defense fall apart, then you're fixing offense and defense, and then you're fixing special teams. You're fixing more than what you need when all you need right now is to keep the defense together and find a few missing pieces, skill players as well. We let's be honest. I have to be honest with you. All right, Alan Lazar is coming over. It wasn't a good sign. He's dropping footballs.
$44 million, and he's benched.
You bench him, but you can't bench Zach Wilson. So you have to look at it as like, how can we serve this defense? Like the defense has all the pieces together.
So
they
you
just
think they
need
should
the
keep
offense to
Saleh?
get together.
I don't think he's earned the right to stay. Like,
No,
I don't
not-
think he's
not-
been bad enough that he needs to go. But unfortunately, like, you have to do something.
Keep Saleh or keep Jeff. If Jeff doesn't get a head coaching job, you have to find a way to keep him there. You have to find a way to keep him there because
But to me, that just continues the cycle. We talked about stability. I think
But
it's
here's the
more
thing too:
unstable.
like, do you
to
go get an
keep-
offensive-minded head coach or defensive-minded head coach after this
I
year?
don't care. That's the thing. I
Because
don't
so many
care what
things
kind of.
change now when it
But it
comes to
doesn't
that.
matter. To me, that's not important. Somebody texted me that we need an offensive-minded head coach. I don't think that matters. The Jets haven't had when was the last time they had an offensive-minded head coach?
Gase.
Forever, right? Yeah, Gase. Exactly. That worked out great. That's my point. So Gase was the last offensive-minded head coach. So that's the guy. No, I'd rather stability. Go get me a guy like Jim Harbaugh who's established in this league, and you tell him the franchise is yours for the next 15 years. Turn it around. We know he can do it. He's had success.
Mhm.
He did it in Michigan. He did it in San Francisco. And by the way, young quarterbacks who weren't expected to be great looks great underneath him. Look how he handled Colin Kaepernick.
And the San
the Alex
Francisco had a
Smith
great
situation.
defense.
Like,
They had a great
yeah.
defense. He fixed the offense. Listen, here's some stats. 2011 to 2014, they went 44-19 on the gym. That's
The
great.
Jets,
That's
right?
insane.
By the way, do you know what the Jets record is under Rob Saleh?
I don't want to hear it. What is it?
15-30.
See, you got to go get a guy that's established. And you got to almost say, hey, this is yours for.
And you talked about the parent. You talked about being
Yeah.
the parent. The head coach is the parent. You
Mhm.
know he's going to be the parent in the room.
Absolutely.
You know that. And that means Rodgers, you're a kid now. It feels like Rodgers has been co-parenting at this point this year. And he's almost been the parent above Robert Saleh. You bring a guy like Harbaugh in, he's the parent, and Rodgers step in line with everyone else.
Absolutely. And also with Harbaugh, he was successful in the NFL, in college, and a lot of coaches cannot do both. You either coach
Yep.
NFL, you coach college. So for him to go be successful in both on both levels, lets you know that his program, his system works. Whatever it is that he has, his philosophy works, but he has to have that time. Then that's when the New York Jet fan base has to kind of like, okay, when are we going to get going? Like he has to come in, honestly. He has to at least scratch the surface of playoffs. He has to. The wheels have to. It has to be. Oh man, the last two games were eliminated. That's what he has to show coming in here. But I do think I think he's the right guy. He's the right candidate. But I'll go a different route. All right.
Go ahead.
And I got two candidates that
I'm
come to
excited for this.
mind. All right. When I think about when you think about New York Jets, when you think about New Jersey, New York, and the fan base, you need a coach that has to have tough skin, and you also have to have a coach that it's my way or the highway. I don't care who you are. So when I look at it, all right, bear with me. All right, bear with me. When I look at how things are playing out in New England, and if there's a chance that Bill Belichick walks away, I won't say fired because he's going to walk away. Why not?
Did I say this 3 weeks ago? I feel like I did. I know it was in my
You
notes.
did, and now I'm just sitting here thinking about it. Like, why not? And Rex Ryan is looking really good on TV.
I take Rex.
Still,
I take Rex.
look like he hadn't aged a bit. Why not?
Here's what we need to do. We need to get Rex on the show, and then he can pitch himself to the Jets on our show. Like, that's what we
Yeah.
should be doing.
I'll reach out. I'll get somebody to reach out to Rex.
Yeah, we got to reach
My
out
buddy,
because
but listen, my buddy ran into Rex in Nashville and sent me a picture. He was like, "Man, do you know this guy?" I'm like, "Sexy Rexy? Who? I mean, come on. I mean, it's only one other person that looks like him, and
yeah,
and that's his
yeah,
brother.
that's his brother, Rob.
But man, just he was like, "Man, he's coolest dude." I said, "Man, listen, I know that's why guys were willing to run through a wall for him. Like, yeah, we struggled, but man, we were willing to run through a wall. Like you said, 6 years." You only seen 1 year where you felt like, players didn't play. Like guys were willing to run through a wall. You know what I mean for Rex. So you get a guy that's familiar. He went to Buffalo, put us out of the playoffs. Everybody forgot about that.
Yeah,
Like it was like we did like the New York Jets that year that we almost ran the table, and 2015
yep.
we got swept by the Buffalo Bills when Rex Ryan was over there. That was personal for him. It was personal. Because he knew he was close. He knew it. And he knew the pieces that he needed. Like you had guys on his defense that had no business playing NFL football. And he still, we were fighting and doing the things that we needed to do as players. And that lets you know the type of coach you had. We just didn't have the talent. So, I would love to see a Rex Ryan, part 2, or possibly, Bill Belichick. A guy that come in and what's the worst that can happen for Bill? You know what I mean? Like he's they want to talk about, well, he needs Tom Brady. I don't think so. He just now is maybe just time to change scenery and just see what happens from there.
Years. Yeah. Look, I worked for the Ravens and I love John Harbaugh. And so I got to see him personally up close and how he interacts. So I think Jim is younger. And I think that's a big part of this also. He's a little bit younger, so it could be more of a long-term thing. I'm trying to look for stability for long-term. But I have a question for you. Whether it's Rex, whether it's Bill, whether it's Harbaugh. If Aaron Rodgers says, no, keep Saleh and Hackett and Saleh and Joe Douglas and all that and say, this was my bad this year. And the organization has the choice and they have the option. And you have Harbaugh or Bill or Rex, and they're all saying, we're willing to come to the Jets. You know that you're getting guaranteed one of them. And Rodgers says, I'm only playing if you keep this head coach or make Hackett the head coach. Do you get rid of Rodgers for the head coach?
Well, this is an assumption to all the listeners. Like we don't know what Rodgers
right.
is saying,
it's a hypothetical. Correct.
Yes, it's hypothetical. Is this saying Aaron? No, we're gonna go get this, and he said, "I'm out. Let him walk."
Yeah,
is that what you're saying?
I would let him walk because here's why. Aaron, a 40-year-old coming off an Achilles
injury.
Injury.
But how much money did they guarantee him though?
I don't care. I can turn my franchise around. Who knows when the next time I'm gonna have if Jim Harbaugh makes the jump to the NFL this year, he's gonna be with that team for the next decade plus. You can't miss this opportunity right now.
And let's be honest, he's in a big traditional program right now, Michigan. Like you have to win in Michigan or you're out. So he can handle like the pressure of coming in, churning it around. And I do think I think
Michigan
he'll be that guy.
He turned them around. He beat Ohio State for the 3rd consecutive time on Saturday.
Yeah.
With him not even on the sideline.
On the sideline. Shout out to my boy Sharon Moore is over there. He was a GA when I was in college, so he's doing his thing as the OC. But Honestly, you have to. In 3 years, I just feel like it hasn't been any like when Rex was here, the first 2 years AFC championship, and then it's been like, oh, just never could get back. But that had a lot to do with what though? With Rex Ryan, OCs on the other side. You bring in Martin Morningwig. You had Mark Sanchez. Well, Mark Sanchez didn't fit Martin Morningwig's offense, so then you had to go get a Geno Smith, a young guy. Then Geno kind of didn't turn the table because with a young quarterback, you have to have the talent. We didn't have the talent from the skill position. So it's so many pieces and factors that go into it. I just feel like defense needs to be catered right now. Let's be honest, and then offense needs to be handled. I think you have to go get Jim. You have to say, Aaron. Well, if you don't want to be here, you don't have to be here.
Right,
You know what I
exactly.
mean? Like,
And that's the thing. You're going to have a high draft pick. They're 4-7 right now. Like I said, they might end 4-13. Draft one of these young quarterbacks. There's a lot of them in the draft this year.
but not early though. Don't waste it on. I'm tired of seeing
bring in a veteran. If Rodgers doesn't want to
bring
be
a
here,
veteran and go get a quarterback that's second, third round guy that can
and build the
come in,
franchise the
learn
right
from
way.
exactly. Maybe you go get
You know
a
what's
veteran
funny?
quarterback for a couple years and watch this kid bloom, and hopefully he takes off.
You know what's funny? We see Miami bring in the hotshot young offensive coordinator as the head coach. They take off. We've seen Trevor Lawrence or forget about Trevor Lawrence, CJ Stroud, second overall pick in the draft, quarterback. They take off. Didn't work for the Jets. They tried the hotshot coordinator, didn't work. They tried the second overall pick in the draft, didn't work. We've seen the Rams go out and get an old veteran quarterback to come in and try and win. We've seen Denver go out and get the old veteran quarterback and try and win. We've seen Tampa did it with Tom Brady, and they all won. All three teams of those ones. The Jets go out and get Rodgers, doesn't work. At some point, it's just the franchise. At some point, you're cursed. It's just the Jets. It's the same old Jets. And that's why we talk about these decisions.
Maybe
We
you
talk
change the
about,
colors or something. Maybe
I don't care. Move the team to London already and just put me out of my misery. Because we talk about these decisions. Should they get Harbaugh? Should they move off of Rodgers? Should they bring back the offensive coordinator? Should they bring back the head coach? Should they make Hackett the head coach, which they shouldn't? But all these things, I just know that whatever they do will be the wrong decision because they did everything right off the last offseason, in my opinion. They got Rodgers. They did what they were supposed to do. They were a win now team. They were ready to do it. And that didn't work out. Nothing that they do ever works out. And that's where I'm at with this franchise. Like we started this talking about how you just have to laugh. We can talk on and on and on in circles about what they should and can and will, and doesn't matter. This team just, they find a way to screw it up.
Yeah.
All right. We'll save our around the NFL for Wednesday or Thursday. Sorry. We went a little long. So we'll do a mailbag on Thursday also. So if people have questions, send them in at flightsnack24 at gmail.com. Or you could tag Bilal or me on Instagram, Twitter, and send us the questions. We want to hear from you. Hopefully we'll have more to talk about later in this week. I'm not even sure what the conversation will be. Maybe Rodgers will be back at practice. I'm curious to see what he has to say on McAfee this week. So there'll be a lot to talk about later in the week. And then obviously we'll preview the game. They're now 2.5-point dogs at home against Atlanta on Sunday. So we'll preview that game also. Until next time, I'll see you at Bilal, all right?
I'll see you, man.
Let's go to eat a damn snack.